My grandfather, Hugh McRae, and my great-uncle Donald McRae were frequent travelers to Scotland in the 1880s, and they saw golf being played all over Scotland, but they decided that Wilmington needed a golf club, and in 1896 formed the early beginnings of what is now Cape Fear Country Club.
The club first started at Hilton Park, which most people now would think Hilton Park, the world's biggest Christmas tree.
By 1899, the club boasted its success with a small clubhouse nestled among the pines and overlooking the Cape Fear River, with the city in the distance.
It is the first country club in North Carolina, something the club can take a great deal of pride in.
With the game of golf taking hold in the hearts of many Americans, the club looked eastward for more land and the chance to establish a championship course.
There was a shingled clubhouse on what now would be Mimosa Place, between Country Club Road and where Camellia circles around there by the Christian Church. It was right in the middle of that block. In fact, the house that was Mr. Granger's, now the Talberts, just looked right straight down that fairway.
The golf course in those years rolled south of Oleander Drive for 5 holes. As the club continued to grow, members took an active interest in the layout.
My grandfather, his son, was Bert Bridges, and he was very heavily involved with the club, the golf course, the early clubhouses, and back then there weren't many golf course architects around, so he was very involved with the design, layout of the course pre-Ross.
My father, being well acquainted with Donald Ross, brought him here as the architect.
Donald Ross was born in 1872 in Scotland, the birthplace of golf. Growing up on the links of Royal Donnoch, Ross inherited a keen sense for the essence of the sport, which he brought to America in 1899.
In particular, golf courses like Cape Fear Country Club bear a very close similarity to the Scottish golf courses, which tend to be wide open and comfortable and forgiving and fun to play. At the same time, hard enough to make your birdies on and your pars.
And the hallmarks of his courses, like a great musician, they had a nice flow to them. They were very traditional, meaning the tees and greens were all very close to one another. Of course, the original rule of golf was you teed off within 1 club length of where you hold out.
You step right off of one green onto the next tee, and that's to make walking a real pleasure. And Donald Ross was quite social-minded. He thought that if you had a foursome on the 3rd green and your opponents were on the 4th tee, that you ought to be able to shout over to them, look, we just birdied the 3rd green and you guys are going to have your work cut out for you.
With a championship Donald Ross golf course to showcase, Cape Fear became a social center for the nation's finest golfers.
And they played wonderful golf, and they were dressed in the classic white linen knickers and sleeveless sweaters and ties and white caps, and they all had a cigarette hanging out of their mouth, and they could really play the game. And Bobby Jones himself came here in World War II. He was stationed at the air base out here as a captain in the Army Air Corps. And he used to drop over here and play golf fairly regularly while he was stationed here.
Bobby Jones wasn't the only living legend to walk among the pines at Cape Fear. Isaac Granger, among his many credits, could boast membership at Augusta National, the Royal and Ancient Golf Club at St. Andrews, and the Cape Fear Country Club.
He had the reputation of being the only person in the world who went to sleep every night reading the rules of golf. Thus, this club is probably the only club in the country that can claim or boast of a member who was also president of the USGA, who was also club champion here at Cape Fear, who was also the son of a club champion. His mother, my grandmother, was a club champion in 1904.
Taking its place as one of the finest courses in America, Cape Fear invited the sporting world to Wilmington for the Azalea Open from 1949 to 1971.
The Azalea Open was an exciting time. It was Wilmington's opportunity to hit the big time in professional sports. And of course, Wilmington didn't have any real professional sport contact other than that. And for those of us that were young golfers, it was just a sight to behold. We got to see the top golfers in the world right here. You could touch them, talk to them.
I grew up here in the early 60s when the Zay Open was still going on. And some of my first memories were being able to go out on the golf course and watch the golf pros as a very, very, very little kid.
Well, always a big event here, the Zay Open. Particularly when Arnold Palmer and some of the big guns that are now retired came.
And it was wonderful to have the famous golf pros here, because in those days they all came. Sam Snead, Ben Hogan once or twice, Arnold Palmer, all the great names of golf were here.
Matter of fact, I'm sitting on what was then the 18th hole, and this area immediately next to me was a spectator area, and it was so exciting to see the end of the tournaments.
As time rolled on, changes to the course and to club life kept members in step with the evolution of the game. Now only a memory, caddies once played an important role on the links at Cape Fear.
And these were the children of the mill hands, so to speak, the young boys, 10, 12, 14 years old, and they would come over here. We had a little shack, a caddy shack.
Well, I played with the caddies on Mondays. Monday was closed. Caddies got to play on Monday.
About the time that the 3 tennis courts were built and a small swimming pool, they did away with caddies on the golf course. So the caddy shack was sort of abandoned, you know. And we asked the committee if we couldn't get that caddy shack and use it as a tennis pro shop.
Though tennis courts had been present throughout much of the club's history, it was only in the late 1950s that Cape Fear made a serious commitment to establishing a championship tennis facility in Wilmington.
Well, the tennis courts added a new dimension to the club that it didn't have before. It had always been a golf club and somewhat of a social club, and when the country club built the private courts here, it enabled a lot of those people that really enjoyed tennis to have a way to do that.
The swimming pool and tennis courts were built sort of on a shoestring because there were a lot of folks that didn't want tennis courts, didn't want a swimming pool, but those of us that were swimmers and tennis players just had to have it.
Never a stranger to change, Cape Fear Country Club opened its doors to swimming in 1956. Along with the new tennis courts, the swimming pool's opening marked a new era for club life.
I recall when the swimming pool was first built, and in those days it was a lot easier to get to and from Wrightsville Beach than it is today. And a lot of the club members moved to the beach in the summertime. They had summer cottages down there. And so I think a lot of people felt like the pool really wasn't necessary, but it's proven to be one of the best ideas I think the club has ever had.
In 1996, as the club celebrated its centennial anniversary, members took a keen interest in the institution's storied history.
We started digging around. We heard of this thing called Donald Ross Society. We called them up, and they said, we're checking the Tufts archives. We called over there, and sure enough, a musty old drawer with these vellum paper drawings that Ross had of Cape Fear Country Club.
As a child growing up here, you didn't realize who Donald Ross was. And the older you become, the more important he has become.
The fact that it's the Donald Ross golf course in and of itself is a very important aspect for our history, because people love to play Donald Ross golf courses. They're not easy to play, but they're fun to play. They're adaptable to your game. It's right there in front of you.
The best thing about this golf course is you have an original Donald Ross layout in the middle of Wilmington, which is kind of a unique situation.
The best thing about the course is Donald Ross course. It's fairly easy. I call it golfer friendly.
His mark is a golf course that you can play day in and day out and never ever be bored with the golf course. It's a challenge every time you step out on it.
It stays in great shape. Mike Claffey keeps a good golf course. He really does, and I have friends that come down from other places and play with us, and they are very congratulatory of the course.
The golf course is probably the most important asset our club has, and always has been.
We've had changes in the Ross course over a period of time, and it seems like every time we make a change, we come back to the original.
The Ross legacy here is a great link to history. I think it, is a distinction for this club that provides it a legacy that, is not going to go away.
Oh, the golf course is wonderful. And the whole club, the whole atmosphere out here is fantastic.
Best thing is that you can come out here and have your own game anytime, no tee times needed. It's just a very pleasant atmosphere, a lot of friends that you get to play with, people that you know.
This club, I feel very honored to be associated with it, and it offers tremendous fitness opportunities.
My little girl plays tennis, so I will hit the ball with her some. Swim, yes, we spend a good deal of time at the pool in the summers.
I just don't have enough good things to say about my experiences growing up here.
Cape Fear Country Club's home, and that's probably the way I hope it'll always be, and hopefully my kids will feel like that when they're my age.
We have different constituencies here, of course. The golf constituency, the tennis constituency, the dining and house constituency, so to speak. So all of them have to be first rate, because clubs are now in competition with a lot of facilities. A half a dozen or more golf courses within a few minutes of this place. So, and all of them are excellent. So this golf course, to maintain its standing, has to be excellent.
I see a very bright future for everything. The golf course is quite important because the golf course is the core of the country club. And Cape Fear is in a position to restore its golf course to be absolutely the best of the best. It's all right there, and I see bright times ahead.
With a lasting legacy of champions and traditions, Cape Fear Country Club continues to set the standard for generations to come.